Hey everyone, welcome back! So, we all think we know about Vikings, right? Brutal warriors, axes, horns on helmets, except, spoiler alert, they didn't wear horns on helmets. That's Hollywood. But here's the thing, what Vikings actually had was something way cooler than Hollywood nonsense. They had weapons that genuinely shocked Europe. Weapons so effective, so innovative, so terrifying that medieval armies literally didn't know how to fight back against them. Today, we're diving into the actual Viking arsenal that made European kingdoms absolutely lose their minds. Stick around, because these weapons were weird, brutal, and surprisingly ahead of their time. Let's start with the most iconic weapon, the axe. But not the axe you're imagining. See, most medieval soldiers in Europe used swords. Swords were expensive, required training, and were honestly kind of fragile. Vikings, they grabbed axes, literally the tool people used to chop wood, and weaponized it. But here's why this was actually genius. An axe could split wood, which means it could split armor. Medieval plate armor, designed to deflect sword strikes, designed to let blades slide off at an angle. Axes don't work that way. They have gravity working for them. They come straight down with crushing force. A Viking could swing an axe with one or two hands, depending on the situation. One-handed, great for boarding ships or fighting in tight spaces. Two-handed, you're basically swinging a massive gravity bomb. Knights in full-plate armor started realizing their fancy $1,000 get-up suddenly didn't mean much when a Viking is overhead smashing them like a piñata. But here's the wild part, Vikings didn't just use one type of axe. They had small axes for throwing, medium axes for one-handed combat, massive axes for two-handed devastation. And the scary part, Vikings trained with these things their entire lives. They didn't learn combat a year before battle like some medieval knights. They grew up throwing axes at targets, chopping wood, building ships with axes as their primary tool. So when a European knight faced a Viking with an axe, he was fighting someone who'd been using that weapon since childhood. It's like bringing a sword to a competition where your opponent has been doing CrossFit with a battle axe their whole life. Now, let's talk about shields. Shields aren't really weapons, right? They're defensive, boring, passive. Except Vikings turned shields into weapons. A Viking shield wasn't some delicate thing. It was a thick wooden disc, about 3 feet in diameter, reinforced with iron bands, and used as an offensive tool. Vikings would bash enemies with shields, not gently bump, but full power shield strikes that could break bones, knock people off their feet, or crush skulls. They'd use shields in formations where multiple Vikings would line up, advance like a wall, and basically use shields like a rugby scrum made of paint. Medieval knights with their individual sword fighting style, suddenly facing what's essentially a moving fortress with teeth. But here's where it gets really wild: shield management. Vikings would use shields to trap opponents' weapons. A sword gets caught between 2 shields. Now you're stuck while a Viking with an axe shows up. It's like the world's deadliest game of pin the weapon between 2 shields. And the design. The shield was specifically curved, with a central boss, the metal center, so it didn't just stop blows, it deflected them. You hit a Viking shield at an angle, and your weapon either bounces off or gets stuck while the Viking counterattacks. European knights eventually copied this design. By the way, they looked at Viking shields and went, yeah, we need to do that. Now here's a weapon almost nobody talks about: the Sikhs. It's basically a knife, a big knife. But calling it a knife is like calling a shark a fish. Technically correct, but it misses the whole terrifying point. The Sikhs was a single-edged weapon, usually 12-24 inches long, with a wicked sharp blade, and sometimes a backwards curved spine. Vikings used these in close-quarters combat. When an axe swing missed, when a shield bashed didn't connect, the Sikhs came out. Medieval knights? They wore plate armor, lots of it, heavy, restrictive. And there are gaps, the armpits, behind the knees, the neck, the wrists. A Sikh is perfect for finding those gaps and exploiting them. In a grappling match against a knight, a Viking with a Sikh had a huge advantage because they could move their weapon into the armor gaps while a sword user couldn't. It's like the difference between using a sledgehammer in a hallway versus using a knife. The knife wins. Plus, the Sikhs was cheap to make. Every Viking could afford one. Every Viking carried one. Meanwhile, European knights were worried about dropping their expensive swords and losing them. Vikings had backup weapons for their backup weapons. Here's a secret: nobody likes admitting spears were the most effective medieval weapon for like 1,000 years. Axes are cool, swords are iconic, but spears won wars. Vikings used spears extensively. A spear is a simple weapon, a pointy end on a stick. But that simplicity is why it's so effective. You can stab from distance. You can keep an opponent at arm's length. You can use it one-handed while holding a shield in the other hand. A Viking with a spear and shield formation could basically create an impenetrable wall of pointy weapons while protecting themselves. Medieval knights, trained individually, suddenly couldn't deal with organized spear formations. One-on-one, the knight might win. Against 10 guys with spears working together, the knight is getting turned into a pincushion. But Viking spears had a secret weapon design, the wings. Some Viking spear heads had lateral protrusions, basically little blades sticking out to the side of the main point. Why? Because if your spear gets stuck in someone's armor or shield, those wings prevent the opponent from just twisting and ripping your spear out of your hands. It locks in place. It's like a fishing hook. You can't just yank it out. You have to struggle, and while you're struggling, the Viking with the spear is still controlling the fight. Medieval armies eventually realized spears were superior and started using pike formations, basically long spears in organized groups. This was basically Europe copying Viking tactics 500 years later. Now here's something genuinely unique: the Francisca, a throwing axe that Vikings perfected. The Francisca is small, aerodynamic, balanced perfectly for throwing. Vikings would throw these things at incoming enemies before the actual battle began. Imagine the medieval equivalent of a sniper volley. But here's the genius part: the Francisca had a curved blade design that meant it would rotate predictably as it flew. Vikings could calculate throws with incredible accuracy. And when that axe hit, it either killed you or wounded you. And even if it didn't kill, it caused chaos. Here's a historical account: Vikings would throw Franciscas at enemy shield formations. The axes would stick in shields, making them heavier and harder to manage. Soldiers holding shields suddenly had axes embedded in them, throwing off their balance. Then, while the enemy is distracted dealing with embedded axes, the Vikings charge with their main weapons. It's tactical genius. It's basically ancient psychological warfare combined with actual warfare. Medieval armies tried copying this too, but axes are weird things to throw. You need to practice constantly. You need the right balance. Vikings grew up throwing axes recreationally. It was like horseshoes for them, except the stakes were literal life and death. While we're talking about ranged weapons, let's talk about Viking arrows. Vikings had archers, and their arrows were optimized for penetrating armor. Most medieval arrows had leaf-shaped heads designed to wound, but bounce off armor. Viking arrows? Narrow, pointed heads with hardened steel. These arrows were specifically designed to pierce plate armor. A Viking archer could shoot an arrow that would go straight through a medieval knight's mail armor. Not wound it, not dent it, go through it. This was a huge problem because European knights were like, our fancy expensive armor doesn't protect us from these arrows. What's the point? They had to invent better armor, which led to plate armor evolution. Vikings basically forced Europe to innovate its defensive technology. But here's the thing, Vikings didn't just have archers standing in the back. Viking warfare was much more mixed than European warfare. You'd have spearmen, axemen, archers, and shield formations all working together in coordinated tactics. European armies were still doing the knight's charge strategy. Vikings were like, what if we used tactics? Here's something that really freaked out Europeans: Viking naval warfare. Vikings had weapons specifically designed for fighting on water. Grappling hooks attached to ropes, boarding axes, special spears that could be used one-handed while climbing ship rigging. Vikings would pull enemy ships alongside their own, throw grappling hooks to lock the ships together, and then board with organized assault teams. A European knight in full plate armor, on a swaying ship, absolutely terrified. Vikings grew up on ships. They fought on ships constantly. A knight had maybe fought on land, where it's stable and predictable. Vikings invented something called the Shieldberg formation, specifically for ship-to-ship combat. Multiple shields locked together to create a mobile fortress on the ship's deck. Enemy archers can't penetrate it. Enemy sailors can't board over it. And then Vikings just wait for the opportunity to flank. It's basically ancient Marine Corps tactics. Here's something historians don't talk about enough. Half of Viking dominance was psychological. Vikings looked different. They acted different. Their weapons looked alien to medieval Europeans. They fought with coordinated tactics instead of individual combat. They didn't fight by medieval honor rules. They used whatever advantage they could get. Medieval knights were basically used to fighting other knights, other guys in armor following the rules of chivalry. Then suddenly, these screaming maniacs show up with axes, shields, spears, and a willingness to do coordinated formations that don't care about honor. It's like a team showing up to a chess match with a basketball. Sure, the chess players are better at chess, but that's not the game being played anymore. European kingdoms started spreading rumors about Vikings being superhuman. Some of this was true. Viking warrior training was intense. Some of it was propaganda meant to explain why their own armies were getting pushed around. But the reality? Vikings weren't superhuman. They were just better organized, better trained, and using superior tactics and weapons design. So why does this matter today? Because Viking weapons influenced medieval development. European knights eventually adopted shield designs from Vikings. Pike formations came from spear tactics. Naval warfare tactics were literally copied from Viking innovations. In a way, the medieval knight that Europe became famous for. That's partially because of Vikings forcing them to innovate. If you've ever wondered why medieval Europe developed the way it did, part of the answer is Vikings showed up and said, your weapons are inefficient, your tactics are bad. Let us demonstrate. Vikings didn't conquer Europe in the traditional sense, but they absolutely influenced how European warfare evolved. They were basically ancient military consultants, except instead of PowerPoint presentations, they used axes. So the next time you think about Vikings as just scary bearded dudes with axes, remember they were scary because their technology, tactics, and training were genuinely superior to what Europe had at the time. The axes were just the most obvious part. Thanks for watching. If this video blew your mind, smash that like button. Subscribe for more history that'll make you rethink everything. And comment what Viking weapon would you most want to see in action. Stay brutal, historically speaking.